Hello, and welcome back to Now This is Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Julia Stepowska, and on this podcast, we explore what it means to feel freedom because the sense of freedom comes from within and not from without. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Carly Anna. She is an ex-therapist turned coach. She's also the founder of the Midas Coach, which is a certification for coaches looking to become exceptional in their field and develop with science and skills. She's also the founder of the Fulfillionaire Collective, which is part of the reason why I wanted her on this podcast, because she has a mission to help people bring wealth and fulfillment into their lives. Welcome to the podcast, Carliana.
Thank you so much, Julia. Great to be here.
So, shall we just dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, my first question to you is, what does fulfillment mean to you? Because a lot of people are seeking freedom in their lives, but they're not necessarily seeking fulfillment.
I love this question. I think so much of what people think that they are seeking when they seek freedom is actually the freedom to live life the way that they want to, right? They want to be free of the constraints of you have to do this at a certain time, you have to do it in this way, and having to say yes to the things that they don't want to do simply because they have to make money or they have to please somebody or, for whatever external reason. And I think what a lot of what we really mean when we say that we want freedom is actually that we say that we want fulfillment. We want fulfillment in ourselves. We want to feel fulfilled in who we are and that deep sense of confidence to know that we can operate as ourselves, we can hold our values, front and center of our lives, that we can stand for what we believe in. We also have like a sense of fulfillment in our work and what we do, because I truly believe that while a lot of people think that they want freedom, and a lot of people, that sometimes means escapism from having to do the things that they think that they have to do, what we really mean and what we really want is the sense of fulfillment and purpose in what we do, because most people would not actually thrive with complete time freedom, with, no pressure, with no purpose. That would be, I think, detrimental for a lot of people's lives. And then we also have fulfillment in our life too, right? Like how we're living, how we're choosing to be, where we're choosing to spend our time, how we're raising our children, or how we're operating in our work, how we, what we do with our free time. Like there are all of these different elements of fulfillment that I've looked at and studied over the years. There's in yourself, in your work, and in your life. And I think when we can nail all three of those and be on this pathway to always prioritizing all three of those, that's when we can feel that freedom, because we have the freedom to live how we want to live in the way that's most important to us.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
Mm.
Why is this so important for you? What's your story behind all of this?
Great question. Like you said, I was a therapist for many years, and I started out my career, as most 18-year-olds do, going to university, getting the degree, getting into the job, doing the masters. And I was about 26, and I was working as a therapist in a job that on paper should have been the most fulfilling and incredible thing to me, right? On paper, it looked like I had it made. And I was the opposite of that. I was very burnt out. I was still very much, I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I was very much in those patterns of people pleasing and perfectionism. And the harder I work, the more worthy I am. And I wanted to blame my burnout on everything outside of me: the job, the long hours, the challenging, clients. And whilst those things were difficult, the real reason that I was burnt out and unhappy was because of me. And I didn't realize that for quite some time. But about 2 years after that, like first experience of burnout, I kind of said enough. and I pulled myself away from that career as a therapist, mostly because I could not fathom the idea of another 40 years spent working for somebody else, working for, their freedom, their wealth, and not having any of that myself. Travel and adventure is a very big value for me, and I wanted to have the freedom and the money to experience more of that. So I got into my business because I thought I wanted freedom, right? Like that was the driver for me. I thought I wanted the freedom to do what I wanted and still make an impact. And it probably wasn't until maybe a year or two into my business that I realized that all of those patterns that had created that burnout had followed me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'd changed the environment, I'd changed the work that I was doing, and I was still in those patterns. I was still people pleasing. I was still, perfecting everything, and I was burnt out again, right? And that was the point that I realized that there was something else missing here. The interesting point to this is I actually wrote my master's thesis on burnout. And so like I should have known what it was that was, tripping me up. But honestly, there's a lot of that modern science doesn't capture, and it's that personal experience of what creates dissatisfaction and burnout and disengagement from your work. So like that's the longer answer as to why this is so important to me, because I've been through that myself. I've been through that experience of being a 25-year-old who should have it made and who should be, on this career and very grateful for everything. And I was just completely unhappy with it. And, ever since it's been this like, I guess every year has been this expansion of like, oh my God, it can get so much better than this. Oh my God, it can get so much better than this. And that's an experience that I want everybody to have, to realize that they are so much more capable than what they think that they're capable of, and they are so much more powerful in creating the life that they want than they think that they are. And like we can break the mold of like this is what a good life looks like, and you can actually create what you really want your good life to look like.
Yeah, I mean, that's really reassuring to a lot of people, because a lot of the messages that we get around us is all about obtaining money, obtaining the job, obtaining the perfect relationship,
Yeah.
obtaining a baby, becoming a mother, you
Yeah.
know. In my case, well, not in my case, but I'm a mother, and that really you do bring all of those patterns with you no matter where you go, because you
Absolutely.
got to do the inside work.
Yeah. I don't know who that quote's from, but I'm sure we can Google it. It's like no matter where you go, no matter where you go, there you are. Like if you want to, if you're unhappy with something, you got to change you first.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely experienced that, um, and most recently in my relationship with my partner, because I was bringing all the patterns in there and wanting to
Yeah.
blame him
Mm.
for all the feelings like resentment that I was feeling,
Yeah.
and then I realized, actually, no, it's me, and I have the power to change that. I mean, he's not perfect, but nor am I. So,
No,
and
of
we're
course
not
not.
chasing perfectionism, we're chasing fulfillment.
Exactly. And that's what I think freedom is realizing that you're the powerful one there. Like, okay, something's not the way that I want it to be. Okay, I can change that. That's freedom.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was going to ask you about your sense of fulfillment as you've journeyed on in your business, but I think you already said that each year it just seems to open up more and more for you, but it's definitely not somewhere where you arrive, right? It's constant work, and it's constantly being accountable for your internal world.
100%. And I think I call it like the never ending, always unfolding pursuit of fulfillment, because there's not one like static state that you get to and you're like, I'm completely fulfilled. Like, I'm completely happy. I'm
Mama,
just going to stop here.
Mama,
Uh-oh, my daughter's found us. Yeah.
Mama, I fall down off the couch.
Okay, all right, you have to go back.
I'm so hungry. I'm feeding myself, Mama.
Mm, she's gonna go get chips,
Okay.
something unhealthy.
You
Okay,
could.
so my daughter just came in and interrupted our conversation
Mm-hmm.
because she refused to go out with, I have a nanny, and she didn't want to go. And I was like, okay, you have a choice to go with the nanny to the park
Mm-hmm.
and have fun playing with little kids your age, because there's
Mm-hmm.
always kids at the park, and with her sister, or to stay at home and be by yourself in the other room because I'm busy doing something. And she chose to stay at home and be busy doing something. And part of me used to feel really bad for her. Like I needed to bend and mold myself to make her feel better. And I realized over time, and this is part of my freedom journey, my inner freedom journey, is that that's me people pleasing, even with my daughter.
Yeah.
And that I really need that time to work on something that I enjoy,
Mm.
something that brings me fulfillment outside of motherhood. Because I love being a mother, but I spend about 80% of my time being a mother, more than that.
Yeah.
Count like night times as well. And I just have these small hours, small amount of hours during the week where I have a nanny, and I've invested in myself by hiring a nanny twice a week
Mm.
to do things like this podcast.
Mm.
And now I'm like, no, this is the choice you made, and I'm choosing me. I'm choosing
Mm-hmm.
me.
But how powerful is that, like to demonstrate to your daughter from such a young age that she has got choice, she has got agency in some areas of her life, and that those choices have different consequences. Some of them are going to be better than others, and she gets to make that choice. Like, that's so powerful for her to learn that rather than you just telling her you have to go and do this thing. Because how many of us are dissatisfied in life because we just did what we were told? We learned to just follow, the pathway that somebody else set out for us. It's so powerful that you're modeling that to your girls.
Yeah. I mean, I do follow some people that homeschool or have their children around all
Mm.
the time, and they their values are different to mine, so they show their children on camera, and I try to avoid that
Mm-hmm.
again because I don't feel like she understands what it is that she's saying yes to until she's
Mm.
older. So and my partner agrees. So we've made this decision not to show children on screens.
Mm-hmm.
Although my baby did show up on my early podcast episodes because she was like on me all the time.
I think that's really interesting though, because like it's so easy to look at somebody else and be like, oh, well, I should do it that way too, and like that's not necessarily the best way for every single person, whether it's about how you parent your children or how you run your business or the decisions that you make in your life. Like we have to remember that like we make the decisions about ourselves, and that if those decisions are grounded in our values and what we want to experience and what we believe is right, then we can be really grounded in those decisions moving forward in our lives. And that's I think something that's a huge contributor to fulfillment as well, and freedom, because like you look back at your decisions and you're like, I know why I made that choice. And there's a lot of freedom that comes with that, because you're not looking back being like, why did I do that? Or why did I make that choice? Or, shaming ourselves for it. It's like, you're grounded in yourself. You're grounded in why you do what you do in every area of life.
But that can be difficult to do, right? If you have always followed authority, even from a child, like we were just saying, I could have said, you have to do this, you have to go, but I gave her a choice.
Yeah,
And so if you've never got that growing up and you're always following authority, sometimes you don't even know what your values are.
totally. I would say most people don't even have awareness what values are, full stop. And then they don't even know what their own values are. And then those people who have done some values work, they think that they know what their values are, and they're willing to say, oh, my values are freedom and my values are wealth and my values are this. But their behaviors don't demonstrate that. Like what I say is like, show me your bank account, show me where you spend your time, and show me what you focus on, and I'll be able to tell you what your values are. And they're probably not what you think that they are. And they're probably not what you want them to be. It can be quite a confronting exercise sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that?
Well, I mean, like values are simply like emotional states that we want to experience, right? Like that we're motivated to experience. And so if I look at your behaviors in your life, I can see what you're motivated by. And if I look at your bank account, if I were to see where you spend your money, I can see what you're motivated by. If all of your money is going to Netflix, takeout, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, whatever else it is, like I can probably tell that your values are ease, like probably getting what you want where you want, vegging out, like, but a lot of people will go, oh, but my values are actually like growth. It's like, but where are you spending your money that's like actually contributing to growth? Or where are you spending your time that's actually contributing to growth? So it's just a simple like reverse engineering of like, well, if your values are what you're motivated by and your behaviors are actually like present in your life because you have motivation, then if I look at your behaviors, then I can see what your values are.
When you say that values might be ease and you're like binging out on Netflix and getting
Mm-hmm.
takeaway because you're constantly tired because you're spending so much of your energy on emotionally pleasing other people,
Mm-hmm.
is it necessary, is it really your values then, or is it just that you're you're tired and you don't know how to activate your body or activate who you are because you're constantly pleasing people?
Yeah, well, that's a blanket like assumption, right? Like, of course, like with every single person, those behaviors are going to be motivated by something slightly different, and that's why it's like a conversation would actually help us to understand exactly why that's going on. And, that's the great thing about coaching, right? It's like, okay, well, why are you doing that? What do you get out of that? Why do you think that that's the best choice available to you in that point in time? So yes, it's not a black and white. If you like Netflix, then you value this, but it's like it's a pretty good indicator of what might be going on under the surface, right?
Yeah, totally. Because the reason why I say that is because I noticed since I had my second child
Mm-hmm.
that I will spend a lot of money on takeaway coffees.
Mm.
Before I had children, I was really into like being plastic free, and I would have my
Yeah.
glass cup because I don't really like plastic, the taste
Yeah.
of coffee and plastic. And I would take it away, and I would buy a takeaway coffee maybe at work because I used to have a corporate job, and but then that was it. But now it's like, no, I need to get out of the house, and the motivation for getting out of the house is going to get my takeaway coffee.
Yeah.
And it's because it's that feeling of emotional support that I get from a coffee. And
Yeah.
I'm spending a lot of money on that coffee when I could just like get my plunge out and make my own.
Yeah. And
I'm
that's
not doing it for the caffeine hit necessarily.
yeah, and that's like the interesting thing, isn't it? Because behaviors can look the same across like different people, but like what motivates them is different, which is why the conversation is so important. So, like, what does that coffee represent to you?
Like I said, it's that emotional investment in myself because being a hands-on mum can be so intense.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're with them all night and then you're with them all day, and I don't have the village. Like they say, it takes a village to raise
Yeah.
children. And I've got lots of support, and my partner and I will spend money for support. Like we pay for a nanny, we pay for 2 days of daycare,
Mm-hmm.
we pay for a cleaner as
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
all to help me with my mental health because I
Mm-hmm.
don't have the capacity to do it all.
Mm.
But the coffee is just like, one, it's an excuse to get out of the house, and two, it's just, I think it's something familiar on my nervous system. I'm so used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with, if I get to the root of it, maybe it's because motherhood is so chaotic to the nervous
Mm-hmm.
system. You never know what you're going to get hit with. You
Mm-hmm.
never know if your child's going to be sick or going through
Yeah.
development, teething, or just like having a bad day,
Mm-hmm.
waking up at all hours. And so that coffee is just like that gentle routine that your body craves something consistent.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
But the more I recognize that in me, the more I've been able to separate myself from the coffee,
Mm.
and I don't need it every day now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because it's the need for that like certainty and routine that you're really getting, not necessarily the coffee itself. And that's really how you can help people change a lot of their behaviors, really, is because you understand what you get out of it. It's like, well, what are the more functional ways to create that same experience without needing to do it in this way?
You said you were going to go over there. This is the choice that you made.
I will.
Yeah, I can see that.
You'll be
Funny, yeah. I see that you're regretting your choice. Yeah. All right. Off you go.
Something to relax.
Okay, go make your playa, your beach.
Cute.
Yeah, you can tell that I'm a deep thinker because I'm like analyzing why I have this like addiction to having coffee when I don't even feel like it's the caffeine that I
probably
need.
not. No, it's an addiction to the way that it makes you feel, right? Yeah, yeah.
So I guess that sense of freedom that you have is knowing your values, but also, well, maybe the value for me is stability. Like I'm a risk taker, but I value the stability, or at least my body values stability. And so I'm seeking that out in my life.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important distinction as well. Like, because I am the same. Like, I'm a risk taker, and I know that in order for me to take particular risks that are really scary, I actually need those moments of stability and certainty that mean that I feel safe so that I can then go and do those other things. Because if your life is chaos all of the time, if your life is risk all of the time, you're probably going to end up being quite dysregulated. Versus if you have those moments where you're like, okay, I'm safety and certainty seeking right now, and I'm like really happy with that, and I understand why I'm doing that. And then that means that also I have the, I guess, capacity to go and take a few more risks in another area of my life. And that kind of self-awareness is so important for freedom too, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's something that you're very good at bringing out in other people, is that self-awareness.
Thank you.
I've also noticed that the more I feel stable within myself, the more I find freedom and peace within, the more I find safety in my most intimate relationship, which is with my partner. And so part of like the instability that I have with children, because I'm the one that's always holding them.
Yeah.
And then I found peace and stability inside, so that now I am able to receive more of his holding and his grounding. And that has dramatically shifted not just my life, but the whole family, because I feel so much more held by him rather than feeling resentment or feeling acknowledged, which is creating more instability, right? And if my value is stability, then I had him as a tool for me all along.
Yeah, I love that. And like again, that's another like expression of freedom, isn't it? To be able to be your own source of stability, to like have chaos be raining around you and still be like, I'm good. Like I'm okay right now. Like that's a source of freedom too, right? It's like anything could happen and I'm okay.
And do you think your values are consistent, or do you think that they change throughout your life?
They absolutely change. Yeah. Yeah, they absolutely change. They change because values are just learned, right? We learn our values. They're taught to us like through our families, they're taught to us through what we watch on TV and the movies and the books that we read, through, community groups like, churches, and through our workplace. Like we're learning our values all of the time. And that's quite a passive process. Like we'll just pick up the values of whatever environment we're in. But you can also change your values, and you can also change the behaviors that you do in order to get those values. And that I think is where like the real power comes, is understanding like, what are the values that I want to be experiencing? You know, if I'm someone who, you know, if I look at all of my behaviors in my life and all of those behaviors represent certainty to me, I can pretty much well understand why I don't have the business that I want, why I don't have the relationships that I want, because I'm just like focused on getting certainty, right? Or safety or whatever. But if you start understanding, like, okay, well, actually, I don't want to be feeling certain all the time. Maybe I actually really like that risk taking behavior in some areas of my life. Maybe I really like that growth. Maybe I really like that challenge. I actually want to experience more of that. Well, okay, great. Well, what behaviors would help me to experience more of that? And over time, we can shape new values, but also new behaviors, because those behaviors are leading to the experience of those values. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in your own context, you identified travel as part of your value system, and
Mm.
is that in part because that's one area where you want to risk take and growth?
Well, to me, so we have like there are two different types of values. So you have what's called it's called a vehicle value, or there's the real value. And so travel is what you would call a vehicle value, just like coffee is your vehicle value.
Right.
What's actually underneath that? What are you actually seeking as an experience underneath that? And so, and this is what I had to go through when like COVID happened, right? Because I thought travel was my big thing. And then, of
Mhm.
course, I live in New Zealand, all of the borders closed for quite some time. And I had to like reassess and be like, well, what is it that I'm actually getting out of travel that I could create as an experience here, even though I can't do that? And to me, I there's two types of travel that I love. Obviously, I love traveling with people because it's about connection, but I also love traveling by myself because there's challenge and there's anonymity and there's being in a different place and I've got to figure it out. So I had to figure out like what are the emotional experiences that I'm trying to get out of this. And for me it's growth and challenge about being in a different place. It's awe of being in different places and getting to experience like something different, like a different culture, a different scenery, a different whatever. And then there's often connection as well. Connection with either other people that I'm with or connection being by myself. Like, as you'll know, like being a mother, like, and I think we all experience this to some extent, whether we're a parent or whether we're in relationships. Like when you finally get that moment by yourself where you don't have to make a decision about anybody else, and you're like, "What do I want to do right now?" Like that's what I also get from solo travel as well, because it's like, well, what do I want to do today? Where do I want to go? You know? So when I like deconstruct, it's not travel that's my value, it's adventure or challenge, connection, like, and those are a lot of my top values. So that's why I like it so much, because it meets all of them at the same time.
So what
So
did you do in the pandemic then?
we did a few things. So my husband and I, like, we did trips around New Zealand. So we'd only just moved back to New Zealand from Australia, like 4 months before the pandemic started. So my husband had not seen most of New Zealand. So we went on road trips. We explored like the other island. We saw stuff around here. I invested really heavily, like my time into my friendships online because they weren't here. Like they were all overseas, so I like reinvested a lot of that time there. And I took like some solo trips around, like did like little staycations and went away by myself and things like that. So like although it wasn't like the greatest expression of those values, it was still like meeting those needs as well.
Mm, that's really powerful. I've noticed with myself, so I traveled a lot, but especially when I left school. I didn't even go to university straight away. I wanted to travel, and have just traveled for like 10 years or more, basically. I found a partner that would travel with me. We lived in 5 different countries.
Wow.
And then one day I was just like, hey, let's have a child. Let's just do this. He
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay. And then travel was no longer accessible.
Mm-hmm.
It was no longer accessible because primarily of money.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have like loads of money to be getting an extra ticket.
Mm-hmm.
to like go on an airplane or whatever. And then also the limitation of what you can do, because we'd go to the park. We did travel a little bit when we lived in London. We went to Germany, and we've just like go to different parks, and you
Mm.
can't just walk around a museum or go to a fancy restaurant. And
Yeah.
so that really placed a limitation
Mm.
on it. And I also started to dig deep and to be like, okay, what is it that I'm getting from travel that I
Mm.
can do for myself without traveling? And I think it was that personal growth, that putting myself into situations and seeing how I behave,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, I love the awe, but I also love just the simplicity of being in my garden. So I
Yeah.
don't need to go to a place that is like centrally rich, that is activating all my senses. I could learn to do that at home.
Mm.
And yeah, I think when you get those limitations on you, you really begin to see what it is that you are maybe outsourcing
Mm-hmm.
your sense of freedom rather than insourcing your sense of freedom.
Oh, yeah.
See, for you, you had the pandemic, but for me, it was children. And
Mm.
my desire to travel is nowhere near as strong. It might be because I'm like have enough risk taking and
Yeah.
chaos in my life that
Yeah.
I don't need that right now from another country. Right.
I love that. Yeah, it's so true though, isn't it? Like and this is it, like your priorities change as you go through life too. Um, I feel myself not satiating on travel, but I feel myself being more like picky about where I'm going to and why I'm going. And, for the last 3 years, I've traveled 3 to 4 months out of every year. And that's a lot of time to be away from home, to, be disrupted in my schedule. And I've almost like satiated on that. Like I almost needed to get it out of my system. And now I'm like, okay, well, what does the next season, what is that, what are my desires in this next season, and do I want to travel less, or do I want to travel differently, or but that's the cool thing about being so in touch with like yourself and what is important to you, that you can really switch that up and not just be on autopilot being like, well, I've done this for so long, I just have to keep going with it.
Yeah, it almost seemed easier to go travel and to put myself in a different place where I was anonymous and I could start all my patterns fresh
Mm,
than to be, the hardest thing has coming home to where I grew up with children.
mm,
That has been a huge personal growth
yeah,
challenge for
yeah,
me, because I have been this other person where I've made an entirely new life for myself,
yeah,
come back with my children and the way I parent, and then be challenged by the way my parents parented, and then the way
mm,
my sibling parents differently, and just like everything's familiar, but it's so not. And all my friends are dispersed and they're doing their own thing. And that is almost what I craved, because I'm addicted to the personal growth journey.
yeah,
And that's what I needed, is to actually come home and challenge myself to sit in the discomfort that
mm.
is the familiarity around me.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to change your patterns when you're out of that original environment, but as soon as you go back into that place where you learned all of those patterns, it's like, oh, I'm being presented with all of these old triggers and, you know, stimuli in this environment. It's like, oh shit, do I really want to, do I really want to change? Yep, okay, I do. What does that look like here?
That's why I like the work that I'm getting more and more into, which is, relationships and, helping mothers to create more intimacy in their lives with their partner, because, you can go off and do a lot of solo travel and discover who you are. But then when you're in a relationship, I mean, there's one level of triggering from your children, but it's completely different when you're triggered by your partner.
Mm,
And you might have done all of this work, and then all of a sudden all these crusty bits of triggering and conditioning comes up, and they like slap you in the face being like, hello. And you like we said at the beginning of this conversation, you bring all the patterns in,
Yeah.
and you try and blame it on the other person, but really it's just that they are giving you a gift and
Mm.
showing you where you're limiting yourself, where you're still holding all of this shame. And when you don't agree on parenting, when you do things differently, that can also be like where you're holding yourself back, because
Yeah.
I was a non-confrontational. I didn't want to bring up stuff, but I was also like, this is my value. I this is really important. So it was like massive growth, and I love that I am moving towards helping other mothers do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy to, live an easy life when you're not being challenged by things, but that's not the reality. Like,
Mm.
we live with other people. Other people make our lives better in so many other ways. But what also
Mm.
comes with that is that we have to learn how to respond more, I guess, effectively in the face of those like trigger moments, right? It's like you can't run from the challenge if you want the rich life. Like you have to learn how to manage yourself in those moments.
Yeah, so maybe that's where the fulfillment comes in. It comes in with knowing what your actual values are and
Yeah.
not those placed on you, and then finding fulfillment in your relationships, not just time alone, but
Mhm.
also when you're coming up against challenges and triggers, and being able to know yourself so much that you trust yourself to work through it and feel held by those relationships to take you to the next level.
Yeah, so well said. So well said. Like I think that's where freedom and fulfillment comes from is learning to manage yourself in it, not just running from it. Yeah.
So, what's next for you in your fulfillment journey?
I have a few things on the horizon, which is pretty exciting. I am starting to apply to PhD programs later this year. I want to continue my psychology education and get back into that work. I think I needed to have a break from it after years of burnout and being in that space, and now I feel like I'm ready to go back into that world. And something that I feel really passionately about is bringing that that body of psychology, evidence based work into the personal development coaching world. So that feels like a really fun challenge to do
Why are you passionate about that?
because a lot of I won't mince my words here because a lot of what is taught in personal development goes against the safe and effective strategies that we have learned from psychology. And I think that so much of the personal development world could be amplified and improved, and people's experience of it could be so much greater and the outcomes could be so much better if we actually just leveraged a lot of the tools and the knowledge that we have from psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you don't have to go to school to be a psychologist to be able to help someone change their lives these days, but there's a lot of learnings from that education that we can bring into our work that is going to make us better practitioners. And that's what the Midas Coach is all about, as you know.
Yeah, I do know because I'm doing that myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, so you're going to do a PhD, and what else?
I am writing a book at the moment. So that's a bit of a secret little project that has been on the back burner, just like working away at it. So that's going to come more front and center in the next few months. That feels really exciting. Getting a new puppy next month. My husband and I are adding to our family, and we're giving our older dog a little sister, which feels really fun. There's a little bit of travel on the horizon this year for me, but yeah, professionally, the next thing that feels most fulfilling for me is really, I guess, amplifying the impact that I'm having through growing my audience and speaking on bigger stages and really having the the PhD to balance the experience that I've got. Yeah.
That sounds great. I mean, part of the fulfillment journey is knowing yourself and knowing your dreams and going after them, and that might be furthering your academic career and talking on stages.
Yeah, well, I mean, like growth and challenges is where I feel really excited and really happy. So, getting to do more of that's going to be really fun. What about you? What's next on your fulfillment journey?
So I want to unschool my children. So that means that I am effectively homeschooling them without a curriculum, kind
Hmm.
of school of life. My girls are half South American, and I want
Mm.
to spend more time in South America so that they get to know their culture, their language, their food, dance, all of that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And also to have that freedom to travel whenever we want, which
Mhm.
is part of the reason why I started my own business. And part of that business is because I wanted to earn money according to my values, which
Mm.
is helping other mothers, particularly with their mental health. And what I'm realizing and what I'm finding more fulfillment from is that mental health for me is being alive in your own skin. So tapping into your sensuality and getting out of your head
Mhm.
and letting go of like good girl conditioning where you feel
Mhm.
like you need to go find external sources for validation or
Yeah.
for freedom when it's all within you.
Mm.
I think that has a huge effect on the way you parent and then also what you model to your children.
Mhm.
So I think the fulfillment journey for me at the moment is just continuing down that path and seeing
Yeah.
where it leads me. It's been a huge, like, I thought becoming a mother was like cracked me open, but becoming an entrepreneur, it's like cracked me open threefold
Yeah.
because all of the things that I used to find need validation for because I grew up in a system, which is partly why I want to unschool, right? So I grew up
Mm.
in a system where I sought authority over my body, I sought authority over my mind,
Mm.
and I needed validation that I was on the right track. So I was really high achieving, even though like I traveled the world and was always like job hopping because I kept moving. I was still like always really good at my job.
Mm.
And I still sought validation from money. So if I was earning money, then I was doing well.
Yeah.
And as you know, in the entrepreneurial journey at the beginning, you don't earn a lot of money. So you kind of have to
Yeah.
really believe in yourself and um, succumb the need for external validation there. So all of this has been really challenging, but really fulfilling. And yeah, I think the journey is just tracking along where I'm going. I don't really know too far ahead. I mean, I have like unrealistic, massive dreams. But at the moment, it's just tracking it along and trying to really honor my body in the process because I
Mm.
give so much to my children,
Mm.
and that is, yeah, I've put myself into a situation where I have these values, which is unschooling my children and having freedom of choice of where we want to live and travel to. And so I'm overcoming all of these challenges in order to make that a reality and
Mm.
then doing it with my partner at the same time.
You're like right in the thick of it.
Again, I'm really in the
It's
thick of
like
it.
everything all at once.
I know,
Um,
I'm crazy. Why? I could have just like, here I am saying I want to honor my body, and then I'm like doing everything at once.
but that sounds like that is honoring your body.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. It I won't grow unless I work it out myself.
Mm.
Like I kind of have to throw myself into the deep end. Maybe which is why I love travel so much and living under the other countries. Like
Yeah.
not only traveling but living there and learning their system and the bureaucracy and trying to make friends long term, all of that kind of stuff. Because unless I'm doing it, it's all just theory, and my body wants to know what that is so that I can, alchemize it and then find wisdom through it. So how can I earn big money with children around? I think this is what so many mothers want. They
Oh,
want to be
totally.
held and nourished by money because it gives you freedom
Yeah.
of choice, right? But you want your children around, but then you don't want them all the time.
Yeah.
It's like you need a break, but you need
Totally.
money in order to have somebody to look after them, because most of us don't have a village. We don't have access to like loads of relatives or neighbors.
100%. Like, and this is like what our generation, like the millennials, have like come up against is like, especially women, we've been told you can have it all, you can have the career, you can have like the family, you can do it all at the same time, you can travel, you can buy the house, you can all of it, you can do all of that. And we're allowed for the first time, I think, to do all of those things. We're the first generation who's been raised on that. But the reality of creating all of that at the same time is a challenge. Like, we're trying to do all of that in our 20s and our 30s. And that's a very short space of time when we are still growing up ourselves and like learning ourselves and figuring it all out. And so I have so much admiration for anybody who is an entrepreneur, and I have probably quadruple the amount of admiration for anybody who is an entrepreneur and a mother figuring all of that out at the same time, because both of those two roles they require such different things from you, but they also require so much of the same from you that it's like you're giving so much of these parts of you that it's a lot to be taking on. So my hat goes off to all of the mothers who are also running businesses, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think we want it any other way. At the same time, this
And
is,
that's it. That's how you know you're on the right path. Like, that's how you know that you're on the pathway to fulfillment. Like, you're doing exactly what you would choose to do. If you were given any choice, I'd be doing this.
yeah, this
Yeah.
is this is choosing my heart.
Yeah. 100%. Absolutely. 100%. So well said.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be able to step back a little bit objectively and see that actually it is hard, but I'm choosing this, and that is freedom, right? Because freedom is all about choice.
Definitely. Like, you have agency, and within the agency that you have, that's what you have chosen to do with your life.
Beautiful. I think that's a good place to end our conversation today. My daughter has finally
She has
gone to
done
the other
very
room.
well.
Yeah, I mean, she's like me, right? You have to live it in order to really understand
Definitely.
the lesson.
Yeah.
I'm sure she regrets it, but
It's okay. And at the end of the day, it wasn't really that much of a disruption, and she's figuring her life out. It's totally fine.
yeah. And then there's also me being like, you know what? She's sitting on her screen for an hour, but I got to do something that has given me loads of energy and lit me up
Exactly.
talking to you. So it's all worth it.
I'm so glad. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on and exploring freedom with
Yeah.
me.
So good. Thanks, Julia.